Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a case from Japan that's, well, it's truly harrowing and incredibly complex. It's one that really challenged, I think, everything we assume about justice, about legal proof, and what it takes to find answers when things are just really dark.
Absolutely. We're talking about a story with a very real human tragedy at its center, but also a fascinating look at how the legal system grapples with that. It forces you to ask, what does justice actually look like in practice?
Yeah, it's compelling. Not just because the details are so disturbing, but like you said, the legal twists, the nuances that pop up when the evidence isn't straightforward.
Exactly, when proving certain things becomes just incredibly difficult for the courts.
That's precisely why we're doing this deep dive. Our mission today really is to unpack a specific, pivotal court ruling. We're drawing from our source material, an article from The Guardian, to pull off the key insights.
Right.
We want to help you understand the really challenging path to finding truth in this particular legal battle.
So, the main figures here. You have Lucie Blackman, a young British woman who disappeared in Tokyo.
Right.
And then there's Joji Obara, a wealthy Japanese property developer. And our source, the Guardian article, it zeroes in on a really crucial moment, this appeal ruling from December 2008.
Okay, so that appeal is key. We need to get into the timeline then. What were the initial judgments, and how did this appeal ruling, change things? Because it sounds like it did shift the picture quite a bit.
It really did, but it also left some deeply unsettling questions about what could actually be proven in court versus what might seem obvious.
Okay, so setting the scene, what was the court's finding in that December 2008 appeal, specifically about Lucie's case, given what came before?
Right, so that 2008 appeal was critical. The Guardian article points out that Obara had actually been acquitted initially in April 2007 of killing Lucie Blackman.
Acquitted, okay.
Yeah, but, and this is crucial, in that same 2007 ruling, he was found guilty of raping 9 other women.
9 others.
9. And of killing one of them. So he got a life sentence for those crimes already, including manslaughter for the one death.
Wow, okay, so he's already serving life for horrific crimes against other women. So why the continued focus, the appeal, specifically on Lucie Blackman's case? What made it so distinct, so legally tricky?
Well, I think it was about trying to establish legal responsibility for every aspect of what happened to her, achieving some kind of full accountability, legally speaking.
Right, trying to close that loop.
Exactly, and the details that came out in that December 2008 appeal ruling, they were just horrendous. Judge Hiroshi Kodono at Tokyo's High Court laid it out.
What did he say?
He described how Obara took Lucie to his apartment near the beach, how he later cut her body into 10 pieces with a chainsaw and then buried her remains in a cave nearby. The judge was blunt. There is no room for any leniency as the defendant trampled on the rights of many victims to fulfill his desires.
So stark findings about what he did. But how did that translate legally in the appeal?
This is where it gets really specific and kind of demonstrates the legal system's precision. The court found Obara guilty of kidnapping Lucie Blackman, guilty of mutilating her body, and guilty of abandoning her body.
Right, based on the evidence found.
Yes, but, and this is the crucial part, the ruling still stated there was no proof that he had killed her.
Wait, how? After finding him guilty of kidnapping, mutilating, abandoning the body, how could they not conclude he killed her?
It highlights these different layers in a criminal case, doesn't it? Even with overwhelming, horrific evidence of what happened after she died, the court had to look at the specific legal requirements for the charge related to causing her death.
Okay.
Proving, say, death by injury or linking it directly to an action like drugging her required a separate, very specific kind of proof. Evidence of dismemberment proves dismemberment, but it doesn't automatically satisfy the legal burden for proving how she died or who directly caused it, especially regarding the alleged use of chloroform.
It's almost difficult to wrap your head around. Acknowledging these terrible acts, but then adding that caveat on the cause of death itself.
It is, and the source clarifies a really specific legal point here. Obara was never actually charged with murder in the strictest legal sense for Lucie.
Oh, okay. Not murder.
No. The specific charge related to her death was causing death by injury. The argument was that this happened after he allegedly drugged her with chloroform, before a rape was supposed to have occurred.
Right.
But in that 2008 appeal ruling, Judge Kodono specifically said the court could not prove Obara had rendered her unconscious with the chloroform or raped her in Lucie's specific case.
So that specific chain of events, the chloroform, the unconsciousness leading to death, that's what they couldn't prove to the legal standard required for that particular charge.
Exactly. It really underscores how precise, and sometimes maybe frustratingly so, the legal definitions are, especially when things like intent or direct causation are murky or the direct evidence isn't there.
So even with the graphic evidence of what happened to her body later,
Right, the mutilation, the abandonment.
the court had to separate those actions,
Right.
which relate to, disposing of a body,
Yes,
from the specific charge about causing the death in the first place.
precisely. Proving death by injury requires showing that chain of causation in a way that proving, say, mutilation or abandonment doesn't necessarily demand to the same degree. And remember, that life sentence he got in 2007.
The other rapes and the other killing.
Yeah, that remained unchanged. This appeal ruling was narrowly focused on his legal culpability, specifically in Lucie's disappearance and what happened to her body.
What a huge difference that appeal made, though. From being acquitted initially regarding her death to then being found legally guilty of kidnapping her, mutilating her body, and abandoning it. That's a very different outcome.
A very significant shift in what was legally affirmed, yes.
Yeah.
And the article notes how Lucie's mother, Jane Steer, reacted. She saw it as justice.
What did she say?
She said, "This has been a harrowing ordeal. Truth, honor, and justice have prevailed, not only for Lucie, but for all victims of violence and sexual crime."
Wow. Powerful words. Finding justice in that specific ruling.
It really underscores how families might define justice differently, what feels like a meaningful step. Lucie's father, Tim Blackman, he also welcomed the ruling. He said, "Although the result is not the absolute decision we had hoped for, it is still an obvious recognition of guilt."
An obvious recognition of guilt. That captures the nuance, doesn't it? Acknowledging guilt for these horrific acts, even if it wasn't maybe the full legal finding they wanted on every single point.
Exactly. And just for context, the article reminds us Lucie had been working as a hostess at the Casablanca nightclub in Tokyo's Roppongi district.
Right.
She disappeared back in July 2000 after apparently going with Obara to his flat. Her remains. They weren't found until January 2001.
Such a long time. Okay, so that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. It's been, well, it's a heavy one, but legally fascinating.
Definitely.
So to recap the key points for everyone listening, Joji Obara faced these different verdicts over time. First, in 2007, convicted for multiple rapes and killing another woman, got life for that.
Perfect.
But acquitted regarding Lucie Blackman's death initially. Then, this crucial December 2008 appeal specifically focused on Lucie.
And that's where he was found guilty of kidnapping her, mutilating her body, and abandoning it.
But crucially, that same appeal ruling stated it couldn't be legally proven that he killed her, or specifically that he administered chloroform in her case, despite everything else.
Yeah. That distinction is key to understanding the outcome and what this tells us about, the pursuit of justice, especially when you have such horrific evidence. But the chain of proof for specific charges gets complicated. It's profound.
It really is. And you see the resilience of Lucie's family, her mother, Jane Steer, feeling that truth, honor, and justice have prevailed.
And her father, Tim Blackman, acknowledging it as an obvious recognition of guilt, even if not the absolute decision they might have wished for.
So, thinking about this, for you listening, when you have this kind of profound suffering, and someone is clearly responsible for such heinous acts, what is the ultimate measure of legal justice?
Right. And what does it signify when the system can acknowledge things like mutilation and abandonment, horrific in themselves, but struggles to definitively prove the actual cause of death under a specific legal charge?
It forces us, I think, to really consider those distinctions. The difference between what we might feel is moral certainty and what meets the standard of legal proof in a courtroom.
Yeah, how those lines get drawn.
And it leaves you pondering, really, what true closure could even look like in circumstances like these. Something to think about.